Do you know summer should be one of the absolute best times for your bonsai development? But unfortunately, it's also, and I see some of the biggest mistakes. But what is really surprising is all of these three summer dangers happen as a result of, well, good intention. We want our bonsai to get better. We're trying to do the right thing. We're looking for loads of foliar growth. We're looking to push extra energy with extra feeding. All we want is what's best for our trees. We even try our best when we go on holidays. So today I'll show you the three most common dangers we all encounter in summer. I'll explain what to look for, and more importantly, how to mitigate or even avoid them. Definitely over-pruning, most definitely over-fertilising, and most certainly poor or ineffective watering. Hi, it's Xavier, and welcome to my bonsai retreat, and welcome to what I hope is going to be very informative and useful. Three dangers, middle of summer, when our trees should be looking their best. And I'd love to say I don't make them. But this first danger is probably the one I'm most guilty of, and I would guess from what I've seen around the country, you too. So what is it? Well, simply put, it's over-pruning. It's when we take that and we turn it into that, and then we ask the tree to kick on and thrive. I mean, ask yourself, middle of summer, the tree mostly is in a period of active growth. It's pulling in rays from the sun, and to do that most effectively, clearly we know it needs to have those solar panels, that foliage mass. So going from that to that potentially has serious implications, and we can do it without even really thinking about it. So how much foliage does your tree actively need? Have I removed too much here? Have I got too much there? Well, there's no empirical number. I can't say to you 40%, 50%, 60%. It's all about looking at your tree, assessing, was your tree healthy at the beginning? How has it performed through the spring? Did you give it a hard prune? Has it put on profuse loads of foliage? Or has it been a little bit slow? Have you repotted it recently? Are you seeing signs of poor percolation in the soil? More of that, actually, in the third danger. So it's very much subjective, but as a matter of rule, I always ask myself one question. And the question I ask myself is pretty simple. Have I got enough available solar panels off each major branch of the tree to support the growth that currently exists? Because as it stands, this is going to have to pull energy to somehow open up new buds on here, here, and here. It's also going to have to do that with just 2 leaves there and 2 leaves there. I removed probably 85% of the foliage, and it was the middle of summer. Foolhardy? Reckless? Many of you'll say yes. What I can say is observation of how these apple operate in my garden, how they respond. Generally, I know that to be safe, except for one factor which I did not take into account. And that is that we're halfway through quite an unusual heatwave environment right now. And these trees are stressed as it is. Watering's an issue. Heat of pots is an issue. More of that in danger 3. What I should have done is made sure that, like this one, each branch that I want to keep has sufficient leaves to keep it alive and to also provide a place for energy to go down and help build the roots. For something like this, what do I really need to do? Well, I just want to control the energy at the top. And that is all I need to do. But let's talk about the reasons why we might find ourselves, well, inadvertently taking off too much. Now, of course, we've sharpened our scissors and we're pretty excited because we had a massive flush of growth in the sort of mid-May, that post-flush hardened pruning that we did. So we've already been pretty hard on it. And we look at it now and we're over the moon. And we think, I just want to remove just a couple of things I don't like. And the first thing we see is down here, shoots and stuff that we definitely don't want. Well, there's nothing wrong with that, is that? We go around, we look in all the crotches, and then our eyes get drawn to, you know, something going in completely the wrong direction, and we're trying it, it's always upwards. And we think, well, actually, I'm never going to want that, so we'll remove that. And we do. And as we're pulling that away, we swizzle the tree and we go, oh my gosh, there's another one. And in we go, and we remove that one. But that's only two. That's okay. And then as we look in closer, we suddenly realise, do you know what? That internodal distance is absolutely humongous. I don't want that. That's ridiculous. So let's get rid of that now. So we cut. And that's only 3 pieces now. But now we're really getting into it, and our scissors are so sharp, we see these great big long ones going up. Well, you know what? We don't really want them either. And they make even fantastic cuttings. And of course, we want cuttings, so we'll definitely keep those. And then we look around and think, well, actually, you know, that's not too bad. I've got another one here. Probably don't need that, and it's doing adverse swelling and thickening there, so I really ought to remove that too. And again, wow, I've got more cuttings. And again. And again. And again. And you know what? We're still not that bothered because, honestly, there's a load of foliage still on there. In fact, we're really happy with ourselves because then we notice that if we cut a few more back, we might actually encourage a second flush. That would be fantastic, wouldn't it? And of course, we've always got to make sure we're redirecting energy. We don't want everything going up to the apex. We want to build the base. So we cut these off as well. Oh, and then while we're up here, we noticed something down here we missed. So we cut that. Oh, and there's also one over here. In fact, it's looking a bit dense in here. I know what I'll do. But of course, I've remembered that Xavier did this great video all about partial defoliation. So now my head's talking about, well, I've got to go around and take every second leaf off, and that'll be fine because it's a Trident maple, it's nice and strong. And you know what? Often that is true. So there I am, busy defoliating, and I happen to notice there's another upward growth. So I remove that while I'm at it. And I'm just about to go in and take another bit off. I've got to get rid of stubs. And I suddenly realise it's actually getting just a little bit bare. And I've noticed that on the tips of some of my leaves are the little browning edges, suggesting a problem we're going to talk about in danger 2. So maybe I'm getting a little bit concerned. But you know what? There's loads of stuff further up. Let's just keep on defoliating, shall we? Because after all, I mean, it is a Trident. It is healthy. It gave me loads of growth earlier in the year. Yeah, it's a bit hot now, but what's the harm in that? And these are the thoughts that go through our mind. And you know what? Before you know it, having lost sight of what it was you were trying to achieve, your tree is suddenly looking like this, and a lot less foliage on it. I keep saying it's a Trident maple. It's healthy. The roots, loads of them. It should be fine, and in this garden I know it will be. But you know what? For right now, the sun is baking down. It's 30 degrees. We've gone 6 weeks without any meaningful rainfall. We've got another 3 weeks of more. There's hosepipe bans. On top of that, aphids are starting to show up again. The strength of this tree is brought down. It's desperately sucking all its energy reserves from the roots to try and put out new buds. So even I find myself asking myself, is this tree in its current foliage state? I've removed probably 60% of it between semi-defoliation, shoots going the wrong way, bits I don't like, too long internodes, balancing the energy distribution. If we have perfect conditions, this will be fine. But if we have a period of sustained heat, tick. If we had a period where we're going to start getting aphids attacking what green foliage there is, then this tree is really, really going to struggle. I didn't need to take this much off at all. The major work I did in terms of foliage happened end of May. The next major work that's going to happen on this is probably going to be in autumn when the leaves have fallen and the energy is already back in the roots and won't be needed again until 2027. Now is actually probably one of the most vulnerable times to do it. And I definitely don't want to get to the stage where I've basically removed everything on this Fuji cherry, because the next thing that happens after that, if anything goes wrong in the environment is it ends up looking like that. And that's pretty bad news for a bonsai you've been growing for 7 years. That was avoidable. So what's my solution? Well, it really is the same solution I have to many of my pruning videos. One simple question: whether it's spring, summer, or indeed fall/autumn. What am I trying to achieve? What do I want this to do? I want this to live for a start. We're in the middle of summer. I do want lots of nice foliage, because this foliage is going to be bringing in the energy which will eventually put this tree through autumn, leaf fall, winter dormancy. Yes, I could push it for a second flush, and maples and tridents will give that to you. But it does come at a risk if you don't take into account the other factors we've talked about. And by the way, I still did take off quite a lot of material, and that is safe for both my hobby and indeed for the well-being of this living tree, because that's what we want to do, continue living. And danger too? Well, over-fertilisation, too much enthusiasm, lack of knowledge, and not understanding what exactly your plant needs or wants and what dangers there are, certainly with chemical fertilisers. I'll talk a little bit more about the organic ones at the end. Often we'll see the fertiliser packaging, it'll have directions for use, and the first thing that goes wrong is when we look on there, it either talks in 3.8 litres or worse, it talks in metric, imperial, something we can't equate to our little thumb cap or whatever it is that we use to measure. So we have a bit of a guess, and we sort of lose sight of the fact that some of these things are chemicals. But generally what we're seeing is we've got something like Miracle Grow, we've got it from the garden centre, all-purpose concentrate. This is actually an organic liquid food, but it's important to read the directions on the back, find out what chemicals there are in it, and have a look at the concentration and dose rates, and also the periods of when you're actually applying it. Because remember, yes, we all want lovely growth and we want lovely green stuff and we want to be enjoying our trees, but more fertiliser doesn't necessarily mean more growth. In fact, actually, I often find that with fertiliser, less is best. And certainly, I mean, many of you already know that in summer there's generally a don't fertilise rule. And that's mainly because the roots are actually spending most of their time concentrating on maintaining water flow through those parts of the tree that it's desperately trying to keep alive. Again, linking back to the fact we do need to have foliage. I mean, don't forget that ultimately fertiliser is actually a supplement. The plant itself gets everything it needs normally from water, air and sunlight. I've left my trees for years without fertilising and it hasn't been a problem. It may be that you want something nitrogen intensive because you want that green lush foliar growth, something which I'll do with my azaleas once we get through the summer. Now, I did say when we spoke about fertiliser there was actually quite a big difference from a chemical based commercial fertiliser to an organic fertiliser. And often with the organic, and you'll see it with BioGold or anything kelp like that, is if the tree doesn't need it, it basically gets washed through and ignored. Fortunately, some of the chemicals that are used within the commercial fertilisers can have a different effect and can hang around in the pot. In particular, undiluted fertiliser, and that builds up in the actual small volume container of your bonsai pot, certainly in your marmets and things like that. And these become quite toxic salts, and as a result of a process called osmosis, instead of the tree being able to uptake water, the salt from those fertilizers is actually removing all the water, causing dehydration and root burn. Now again, if you know what it is you're wanting to achieve, using a liquid drench or a liquid application has a much different effect and lessens the effect of toxic salt buildup. But it's not an exact science, and it also depends on the external factors and conditions, and indeed the conditions of the soil and root mass that you're actually applying this stuff to. Now, say again, this is not a video about fertilizers, how to use them, when to use them. That's something we'll be dealing with later in a later video. And if you want to see some of the how-to or step-by-step videos I've been doing in my Bonsai Essentials series, then hang around for the playlist, which comes up at the end of the video. Or indeed, have a browse through it once you've seen the end of the video. By the way, don't you just love this sage bonsai, literati style. Absolutely love it. More pruning, but not this time of the year. I'm going to wait till the heat's finished. So what are the sort of signs you'll be looking for? Well, really, you're looking at signs of dehydration or lack of watering, because it is relating to roots not being able to uptake the water. So in Trident, you're looking at browning edges on the tips or edges of leaves, or indeed premature leaf drop. Bear in mind, there can be other reasons for that, but that's certainly one of the signs. The soil itself is often a very good indicator and links to danger 3, because you'll see white crusty build-ups as the salt basically builds up on there or indeed around the pot. If you see that, regardless of whether it's fertiliser or other causes, you definitely need to be doing something. We'll talk about that in danger 3. And what can you do if you suspect that? If you see those signs, then really all you can do is thoroughly water. You're trying to drench it through. Water and water until the water's come pouring out the bottom. Often with those sort of white baked tops, it may not necessarily be just the fertiliser. It can also be, if you're using hard water from the tap, you're getting that calcium build up as well. Again, almost baking the top of the soil, making it pretty impenetrable to water. Which is why you'll often see me in midsummer going around all my trees and just digging into the soil to break any crust that might be there. You've got to get water in there. And the third danger is probably responsible for more bonsai deaths over the course of many years than any of the other things that I've spoken about. And that is indeed poor or ineffective watering, or just downright laziness. We've all done it, so I'm not accusing you. Especially in extreme weather conditions that we're having right now, the trees in the UK are certainly not prepared for, and worse, are not even in their natural environment. Instead, we're squeezing, well, this is a great big 3 or 4 foot English oak, which loves to put roots deep and wide to make sure it gets enough water. We put it into a really shallow container that, quite frankly, isn't enough for me to wash my feet in. I mean, we should be prepared for it. We put our bonsais into these little small containers with a small volume of soil in a very, very free draining root mix. I know exactly where all the water is going to go from there and how quickly. Added to that, we'll often find that the tree has been in the pot for ages. It's absolutely packed with roots. It's lifting up, or worse still, we've got the pot covered with a moss or covering, which makes any attempts of getting water through there nigh on impossible. Now clearly we can't expect our native trees taken out of their natural environment, crammed into a little plastic or clay pot, and expect it to sort itself out. We need to be responsible for the water that it definitely needs. So directed and effective watering is essential. Not just a lazy swamp around with your hose and hope that that gets them all properly, because as you'll see in a moment, it doesn't work. Because hidden pots like these get missed or masked or covered by dense foliage canopies of other trees. And certainly compacted or baked root surfaces means all the water does is roll off, and certainly indiscriminate spraying will have absolutely no effect. They'll look nice and wet from observation, but anywhere below a millimetre, it's going to be bone dry. Result of that? Well, I don't really need to say much more, do I? Often, when you've got lots and lots of trees, cuttings, and they're all crammed in together like I do, you can miss some real obvious telltale signs, like loads of this horrible algae, weedy sort of growth that cakes across the top. That too will stop any sort of water seeping through. Another factor is what I call the Kiln Effect, and certainly it's applicable to your azaleas, which have got a fine, delicate root system, and the pots just become so hot as a result of direct sunlight on the ceramic that it bakes all those roots that are low down or close to the edge. Which again, why it is, certainly with azalea, you put them in a nice deep pot and you try not to cram the roots right in so they're not touching the edge. But definitely watch out for overheating pots. But there are things you can do. You don't just water the trees and the soil, you actually concentrate on cooling the sides of the pot down. Put it low down on the ground, keep it off the concrete, keep it on the grass, keep it near shaded areas, or indeed group them all together. You can also wrap them or cover them in protective materials. We each have different environmental factors or conditions in our gardens, and we each should have slightly varied and different routines in how we keep our living trees safe, alive and thriving. Now, to be honest, this sort of problem doesn't generally happen when we're around and watering daily. Even if we have got less than ideal watering habits, we generally see what's going on. Now, the real problem happens when you, or indeed I, decide to selfishly leave our living trees alone and go on holiday with our family. And the biggest answer is sort of automatic systems plugged in. We have things come on at different times of the day at selected parts of the garden. And I know many of you do that, and that's ideal. My biggest warning to it, test it. Don't just test it once, twice. Have it running for a week or two while you're still there so you can see, are there coverage zone areas? What you don't want is this lovely spray of water going all around the trees you love and missing your favourite, like a nice old ancient Japanese white pine that's cost you thousands of pounds. You certainly don't want that to happen, do you? Probably the final alternative is rely on friends and family. It's a last resort. I will always say it's a last resort, unless there's someone that's part of your hobby and understands exactly what's required and you've almost supervised them. It's a lot to ask of anybody. And the reality is those three dangers rarely operate in isolation. They're cumulative. It starts off, wow, over-pruning. We've gone a bit too hard. Then we have a lot more heat, or we don't. Or we put loads more fertiliser, that builds up toxic salts, means more water's being drawn away from the roots. And then finally, we put the tree somewhere where it's either getting masked by other trees, so as well as being toxically assaulted, we're not even giving it water anyway. All three working together, and most of the time you won't notice until the foliage looks like that. So there you go. Over-pruning, over-fertilising, poor watering regime. All three, in isolation or together, can certainly lead to your bonsai's death. And for those of you who are concerned, this Trident maple is going to be absolutely fine. It was actually pruned a couple of weeks ago. Buds are all starting to come through. However, if I was pruning it now, like I've just done with this one, that's the amount of foliage I'm going to leave. Lots of nice green canopy. I want the sun to go through those and into the roots. And that is going to be the way that my trees stay healthy. So all that's left for me to do now is to go on and do another 9 Trident maples, very, very similar to this one, and some Japanese maples, reminding myself that the tree and its health come first, not my idea or design for its future as a bonsai. And if you want to see more great step-by-step guides or advice or bonsai essentials, then that is a great playlist for you. Otherwise, happy bonsaiing, God bless. Cheers.